We are here from KGTLA, and we are on the podcast with Dino and Ash.
You're on that podcast, Dino, in the morning.
That's too much.
No?
Yeah, it's too much.
How you doing? Babe, you doing good? You having a nice morning?
Yeah, having a really good morning.
Yeah, having a good day. We've had some good stuff going on, especially with the kiddos, huh?
Yes. We thought we would talk a little bit about kids stuff today.
Yeah. I have a hot take though.
What is it?
Oh yeah, I have you on the edge of your seat. Huh?
Well, you came in strong with I have a hot take, and then you got really soft in your voice.
I know. I feel like bringing dramatic effect.
Okay.
My hot take was we were talking about husband and wife stuff. I thought it would be really interesting just to share my take on the way that I see you. Somebody said something that hit home to me a while back, and they said that after you get married, you should look at your wife as if that is it. That is the picture of perfection. And I'm going to butcher what they said. They said something that was...
I feel like you've shared this.
And I want to share it again because it pertained to something we were just talking about. Yeah. You stop your eye wandering from anything else. And the reason why is that you don't look for beauty outside of the definition of what your wife is. Actually, a pastor said this. He's like, people talk about homosexual or heterosexual attraction. I'm Ashley sexual. Like, you are the only thing in this world that I look to and look at. And I thought it was just a really, what?
Ashley sexual.
You're so funny. Like,
yeah.
But you know what I'm saying? Like, just the idea that the only thing that I allow as an outlet is you. And we've talked about this a bunch of times, but I was actually just talking to our boys about this concept because they're now getting into puberty and getting into that whole like girl phase, and they have this wandering eye. And I've been trying to work with them and try and understand the right way to tame your eye and tame your mind. It's easy to just be like, oh, don't do this and do this, you know, but that's so hard. You know, you can't teach a child, you can't get a boy to understand things by helping them without unpacking it.
Yeah. And I think we've seen just from our own parenting, and I know like the differences of the way that I was raised and you were raised, that just throwing out rules doesn't do
rules
anything.
And punishment do nothing.
Yeah.
No.
Just throwing out just like, don't do this, that's bad, don't do that. Well, why not?
Yeah.
And also like there's just so much more happening in your brain, especially for a young boy.
Yeah, so we've been working with the boys, just trying to help them to understand what's going on and why and how God's design is for marriage and their sexuality and things like that, helping them to just grow as men.
Yeah.
And I think that it's an interesting topic in general for me to be talking to them on, and it's worth us kind of unpacking here. And the thing that I've been trying to help them to understand is that there's a lot gained in deferring and understanding this is an aspect of me that is, if left uncontrolled or without discipline, it just becomes a wildfire.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, so let's talk about our parenting in general. Would you categorize our parenting as strict parenting?
All right, so we're a hybrid. We're a hybrid.
Strict, but...
We are strict, but it's not rules-based. Like, for example, if the boys did something stupid, they're not going to get just straight up punished for it. It's, hey, I'm going to have a conversation with you about this to understand what you did. And then let's set up a different way of living for a period of time to make it so that you can understand. And it sounds like a punishment, but it's different. It's a different mentality. Absolutely. It's the intent behind it. And it's a conversation so that they understand it. So it's like, hey, we're not going to do this and we are going to do this to make it so that you're not put in these types of situations and you feel better going forward. Yeah. So it's more of like training them to be equipped versus creating rules and punishments for them.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Trying to teach them to have their own disciplines, to make their own decisions, not just what we're saying, but what God says. And for them to have their own relationship with the Lord, for them to make their own decisions and have their own convictions.
Exactly.
Because like, I mean, it's going real quick the last couple of years too with the boys. Like Gabe is 15 and a half. I mean, he's gonna be gone in a second. And you can already tell Gabe, you have to make your own decisions here. We can tell you what we would do. We could tell you what we've done. We could tell you what we believe is right. But you need to have your own relationship with the Lord. You need to be seeking after him, and you need to make this decision. Is this the path that you want to go down? And this is what that's going to look like, you know? So we are very communicative with the kids. We have a very open dialogue. We want them to tell us everything and anything. So that means that when they do, we listen and we talk about things.
Or try to. I mean, I fall down, obviously.
Yeah, but of course. I mean, we're not perfect at all. But there's so much talking.
Right.
And it's so good. But
it is good. Lately it's really hard to go through a full day of working or cleaning stuff up or whatever you do. And then at the end of the night, a child comes in and they're like, hey, I need to unpack all this stuff. And they just like throw up something really complicated. And then you have to be like, okay, this really requires energy. I now need to crank this up and give when I don't have anything here.
I feel like good parenting takes that. Good parenting takes work, just like it does within a marriage. Good parenting it can be exhausting, but it's so fruitful. But you have to put in the work to be able to see that fruit. And we've been able to see the return on that. I would never say we are experts in parenting at all.
No.
So this is not a parenting podcast. That's why and not that we're experts in marriage either, but parenting is so unique. Because each child is so different too. So as soon as you get one thing down with one of them, you got to switch it because the next one is a totally different thing.
Absolutely.
And we've had to come to realize that with even if we're just talking about the boys and how different they are and how they receive things, how they take correction, what kind of punishment works for one does not work for the other.
And what's funny is they'll even call us out. They'll be like, oh, well, you did this for so-and-so. It's like, yeah, but I'm going to tell you the reason why is because different kids need different things.
Yeah. Fairness doesn't equal love.
Exactly. Yeah. So back to the question you asked, do you think that we're strict parents? I'm curious of your perspective on that and if you want to unpack from your side too.
I think that we create a lot of guidelines and boundaries for our kids. So we'll just tell you some examples.
And we monitor where they're at on different facets of life and then adjust the level of...
So our kids do not have phones. They don't have social medias. They don't have any of that stuff. They do have, when we first moved here, we got all the kids, I researched a bunch and we got them all Apple Watches. So I don't know what's out now, but I'm sure it's still probably the best thing because this was a couple of years ago we did this. But we wanted them to have the ability to go to the beach, go to the friends, go wherever on their bikes and stuff and be able to connect with them and contact them. But then also we live by the water. So I want them to be able to go into the water and be able to swim, get out. And I thought, my kids can't even remember where their shoes are. If they have a phone, that thing is going to be lost in a second. They're going to put it on the sand and it's gone. So I researched all the watches and the Apple Watch was the only watch that was water resistant waterproof, just water resistant. All the other ones like the Gizmo or whatever those things were. They've had those and been very responsible with them. They are also locked down. So as
there's good, that was one of the other criteria. We needed parental controls that would let us lock it down in the way we need to lock it down.
So Dino has that.
Yeah, I can control it from my phone. Which contacts they can have access to and things like that. So it's going to sound like we're really strict.
I know,
because that's what I want people to understand. If you ask that question, are you strict with your kids? I think no is the answer, but from an outside perspective, it's going to look real strict.
Yeah, because a lot of parents are going to be like, well, what about what if your kid? They're the only ones that don't have it, sort of thing.
Good.
And I don't care.
No.
I don't. No. And that's the thing. Even with stuff like this, we talk with them about it. I would rather protect my boys' eyes and their minds than have them be the cool kid at school that has a phone and running around looking at things on their phone.
No, I'd rather them be the oddball out.
Yes. And we try to equip them in that and try to encourage them in that. Again, creating this foundation of who they are with God and not within the world. So it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Who cares?
It's funny though. We do have to do less and less convincing, I feel like, with them.
Sure.
We're going through the mall the other day, even just on this one topic, because Gabe will every once in a while be like, so what about me on a phone and that kind of thing. And we're walking through the mall the other day, and we look over and there's this big group of teenagers, and there's a big group, like, I don't know, 8 or 10. None of them are interacting. They're all looking down on their phones. And I look over at Gabe, or no, Gabe looks over at me and he bonks me and he points it out. And I'm like, yeah, dude, that's what happened. This is the consequence of your generation.
Yeah.
Basically getting access to this stuff. You would just be another one of these people. I'm like, aren't you glad? He's like, yeah, I don't want it.
Yeah.
Deep down, they don't want this.
I don't want that.
Yeah, seriously. Like if you and I could live with the freedom of just having a flip phone again, it'd
absolutely
be delightful.
No, it's so much for them to like handle. Obviously, it's way too much information, and we're going through that right now. Just consumption, and when we get to the heart of it, when we talk with them, please take it away.
Yeah.
Like, please take this away. Like, I don't want to see this. I don't want
the temptation of this stuff. I don't want.
We've had that multiple times with the boys. Them communicating that to us. So again, this is just our way and the way that we're doing things, and we'll see how they turn out. But I feel good, at least in our convictions, that we are doing the best that we can to protect them from the things of this world that they just don't need to see yet. They will. They will see it. And I would say I have a really good analogy.
Oh, this is...
Forgot about this.
This analogy is the never ending.
Our kids.
This is great.
Are not sheltered, but we have them in a tent. Now I forget what I said.
A house.
We have them in a tent.
In a house.
It's a tent.
It's got windows. That's the point.
My tent has windows. We have them in a tent. It's their shelter. Okay.
For the record, this was my analogy, and she stole it from me. And then we were in a group of other people, and then she's like, "Guys, I have this great analogy," and then told this whole thing. I'm like, that's my joke. That's my story. This is mine. What are you doing? She's like dead serious. Like, no, this was mine. I'm like, no, it's not. We were in bed. I gave this analogy, and then the next day you went and told it to everybody as if it was yours, which is not the first time that you've done this kind of thing. You're a thief. You're a thief.
I fully admit that I take all your lines and I share them on social media, and I'm like, look at it.
You do.
I got my own stuff.
You do. You have your own stuff. But
I don't take your stuff anymore. I used to.
Get out of here. Get out of here. Get out of here. Half the stuff I see after watching your stories during the day, I go through and tap through. I'm like, I said that last night before we went to bed. This was my idea. That's my joke.
You do.
All right. I don't mind the credit.
You do
it's not about me. All right. I'll go there.
You want me to change my name?
Yes, I want Dino in the name somewhere. All right.
Anyways, so I made up this really great quote.
You did.
I'm sticking to it. Okay. Now I'm gonna butcher it so hard. You're in a tent. You're in this shelter, okay? And this is our parenting. Yep. You have this shelter, but we have a lot of windows in the shelter, and we allow the children to see out into the world, so they know what's happening in the world. They are not sheltered. That they don't. I mean, literally every topic we've talked with them about, or we talk openly.
Oh yeah.
And they want to talk about out into the world.
Yeah.
We just have locks on the windows, though, so nobody can get in.
Yeah, we can put the shades down. So that
we have the power.
We're not going to deal with that right now. And you're not ready for this. And I don't want you to be ready for this right now. This isn't how your brain is at a phase where it's like, we don't need to go. I'll give you enough detail where it's not going to do damage and you can process this. But if I push you anymore, it's just not. This is not what's best for you.
Because the thing is they're going to ask questions, and they're either going to get the answers from us, or they're going to get them from somebody else. Yep. And so we, of course, want them to get them from us and be able to talk about it and have an open, conversation all the time about everything.
Yeah.
So many things.
Yeah. So much talking.
So many things.
Yeah. But even with, one of our boys, we've been working with him, and it's not about punishing. It's like, hey, I'm having an issue over here. Well, all right. If I'm going to coach you, like, let's do this together. I'm going to come alongside you. And I talk to him this way. I'm going to come alongside you And if I were coaching you through this scenario, this is what I would tell you to do. Modify your inputs, like as this is just an example. Modify your inputs. If right now music is something that is kind of bothering you, or it's an idol, or I'm noticing it's something that you're drawn towards, then let's be aware of that with music and shift the way what you're listening to. Let's for a time, not forever, but for a duration, shut your music off and only listen to music content that's going to be uplifting and pull you in the right direction.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's important to say, like, in general, like in our home and in our parenting, we're not legalistic, by any means. Like, we listen to, secular music. Yeah. We watch shows that, have curse words in it, whatever it is, but everybody has their own convictions on what they feel like they can consume and what they shouldn't consume. Yeah. What we allow our children to consume is more of a protected spot, so music, we've tried to teach them too. I mean, even for us, like, yes, we'll listen to secular music. We're not like, no, you can't listen. Well, for us, at least, like, this is bad. We don't listen to any secular music in our house. No, there's great fun songs, and, but like, should you be listening? Like, what are the words saying that you are listening to? And we even say this for us too. We've been talking to the kids about how important it is to be consuming music that is pushing us down the path that we want to go down. If I am wanting to have a deeper relationship with the Lord, if this is something that you're seeking after, children, then, what are the things that we need to be doing to be pursuing that? Okay, seeking after Him, reading His Word, praying and asking Him for these things, listening and worshiping Him. And so all those things go into then another decision making for them. Hey, do you feel like this is fruitful or this is fruitful? Now, in general, like, we have like explicit music off so they can't listen to anything like that in general. The boys too even have convictions about that, listening to music and then coming to us and saying, I just don't feel good listening to this right now. I'm going to switch and only go to this for a while, The goal is to equip them with a skill set of self-monitoring, and then allow them to self-adjust. That's the end goal, because I can't be there all the time to monitor them. Totally. And as they get older, they're going to need a skill set to be able to moderate. How is this good for me? Is it not? And it's been cool. It is working. That example you just gave us was reality. Gabe came to us and said, I've noticed that when listening to this type of music, it just kind of affects how I think, and I'm going to shut that off. And he just then listened to a bunch of Christian stuff because he just didn't feel good about what this other stuff. But we didn't create a rule around it. And then he allowed himself to slowly get back into aspects of it. Like, I know he's been really into some old school, like Blink 182 and things like that. And that's like, I mean, that content's not even like the best, but I like the fact that he is self-aware and able to self-monitor versus me having to monitor every single last detail and then pull back and hide things from him. Yeah. It's about equipping. I was just going to say, so while I wouldn't call us strict parents, but I feel like we really like to equip our children. Yeah. And we want to protect them. So we protect, equip, and they're in their lovely sheltered tent with the windows looking out. You in this analogy, I love it. Oh, so another thing with the watches. So the watches we've had, they're locked down, so they can't just call whoever and text whoever and send photos or anything like that. It's a list of people that we have allowed in. So as the boys have gotten older, and Quinn too, she has one, we have allowed like more and more people to be added to the list as we've seen them be responsible. Again, so far that's worked out. Yeah. And we're going to make mistakes, to be crystal clear on this. We're going to make mistakes. Ash and I know this. We're going to overprotect them on certain areas when we shouldn't. And a lot of times if I admit I get lazy and I'm like, I don't feel like dealing with this right now, the answer is no. Like, I'm not giving you access to any of this right now because I'm just too tired to mentally process the idea of monitoring and helping you monitor this.
And that's not always good. I need to make sure I'm engaging with them, because if I don't,
that's where like sometimes you're weak and I can be strong there and be like, all right, we need to sit down and we need to have a conversation. We can't, and the same thing. That's why it's so great to be in a partnership with your spouse and parenting, to be able to carry each other, because it is a lot. It is so much talking and just equipping again and preparing them for adulthood and to go and make their own decisions. And it's nice to be able to have the balance, because there are times where I'm the same. I'm just like, I just can't talk anymore, and you take it.
Yeah, and I feel like it's a shift too, because the early years, it was like a physical assault on us. And we're always having to, I'm low on energy, you're low on energy. We both get to go and figure out a way to exert some energy and change a diaper or put a kid to bed or bath time or whatever. And now it's shifted in these teenage years, at least with the older ones, where it's psychological warfare, where they're just constantly messing with our brains, and we're having to find tactics on how to psychologically maneuver things, you know?
But this is such a good, I think I'm actually really glad we're doing this podcast, because just as much as we, want to be intentional in our marriages and wanting to create, we have a goal for a certain type of marriage that we want to have. Christ-centered marriage that's on fire for each other and for the Lord. The same thing goes for our parenting, is that we want to raise godly men and women. That is our goal. And so don't sleep on that. Don't let that pass. And it's not too late to change.
Absolutely.
It's okay to be the parent that leans in a little bit harder than the other parents. I think it is. We've seen it from our kids that they are hungry for it. They love the protection and the guidelines, They do. They bucket it sometimes, but when it comes down to like really what's going on with them, when we really talk with them, they love it and they crave it,
Yeah. We got one of our kids in a broken state the other day where they just were like, they didn't want stuff anymore. They wanted, clearly God had grabbed a part of their lives, their hearts, where they were repentant and wanted a bunch of stuff just removed. And you and I had a really cool opportunity to be able to see them in a broken state and then just help them and equip them with, all right, we will help. We will take away the things that are causing issues here. We'll work to create the right constraints. We'll also give good things in place where you feel like you can now grow in things. So it's just been very cool to watch them.
I think to see the joy and the relief, like we just took a burden off of their back.
And when it really, when it gets to a really raw point, that's what you end up seeing. They might buck and they might fight and be like, well, I want this. And you're
the worst parents. Nobody else's parents are like that.
But that's not reality. That's not reality. As soon as it comes down to it, and that stuff has been destructive or causing pain or causing issues,
then it's removed. They're like, oh,
thank you.
So that's just my encouragement today, is just don't sleep on doing the work in your parenting. I know it's tired and I know it's exhausting, and no one is going to do it perfectly. That's not the goal here, is to be the perfect parent, because that's just not possible. But we as husband and wife, we can come together, seek after the Lord, pray for wisdom, and just pray for God's grace on our kids and our parenting towards them.
I think that it would be interesting just to quickly also talk about, and you kind of touched on it, your and my philosophy of parenting and what my childhood was and what your childhood kind of was. Because I feel like what we did was we mixed both yours and mine a little, found a happy medium for it. I grew up in a family where, at the very least for me, I had very few rules. I was given complete freedom to do whatever it was that I wanted, but I was generally speaking like a pretty good kid. Like I didn't get into a lot of trouble and things like that. But the reason why was that I was told, hey, if things go well, we'll continue to give you freedom and push you as far as you want to go. And if things do not go well, we're going to constrain and pull you back. So as long as things go well, if I acted like an adult, they would treat me like an adult kind of thing. And you had a little bit of a different...
Yes, I had a different upbringing. So mine was more rules-based and just, no, you can't do this. no, this is wrong, but never any depth or reasoning or backing to it. I just didn't know. I just knew that I wasn't supposed to. But then when you get to a certain age and you're hanging out with people at school and they're like, well, why don't you do this? Or what about this? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know, because I just know that I'm not supposed to, but I don't know why. Well, then peer pressure is much greater than I had no foundation that I was standing on for reasonings.
No, it was just a law.
Yeah, it was just a law, and I had zero understanding of why.
Of the law and why the law was there. It was just you were standing on the law.
And this sounds so much more fun than law. This is not fun. This is fun.
And I don't even know why the law.
And I don't know why that's
There's
there.
No good reason. Yeah. So fun.
I didn't have the open conversations with my family. I didn't have, the depth and understanding of why. So then there was just a certain point where I just was like, oh, well, I'm just going to do what I want to do.
Yeah.
And
I had a lot less law, almost no law. Yeah. I mean, like, the reality of it is when I was 12 years old, my mom went away to rehab. So from 13 to 18, 17, basically my, high school years, I didn't really have much of my sister and I she raised me mostly. My mom and dad were there, obviously, and taking care of us, but, they were trying to rebuild a whole bunch of stuff and get stuff sorted out. So I didn't really have much law at all. I just had hey, what's good? It was logic. It was all logic based.
Yeah.
So you and I kind of took a lot of things and married them, because there is a law and there's a reason for the law.
Yeah.
But then there's also responsibility of, hey, if you make decisions and those decisions have consequences, and we're trying to teach our kids the aspect of, what a good responsible human being looks like.
I think that's probably our biggest thing in parenting is that is our desire. And especially from what I had and what you had, that we both came to that conclusion that talking about the things, communicating, equipping them, having our kids have their own convictions and teaching them why is so valuable.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that is basically like the base of our parenting.
Yeah. And I always say this too. I say this to the boys especially. I'm going to push you as hard as I possibly can and give you access to as much as I possibly can inside the constraints of what's best for you.
Yeah.
If giving you music is not going to be good for you, I'm not going to do that. Obviously, at some point in your life, I can't stop you from listening to music or being on a phone or hanging out with friends or talking to so-and-so or watching content. I can't stop that at a certain age.
Yeah.
My goal is to equip with the skill sets and a logical understanding of why we do what we do and why we're going to constrain ourselves in certain ways.
Now, like, obviously for Foxy, who's 3, we are not explaining things to her like fully. There are a lot of things we do talk to her about.
She's getting so smart.
I know, she is a smarty pants. But there, obviously, it does depend on ages and obviously within your marriage and whatever, again, your convictions are. That's between you and the Lord, like when you feel like you want to introduce certain things to your kids. I feel like with the world that we live in now, as much as we had tried, even when the kids were younger, tried to protect them from certain things, they would hear things that I hadn't even heard until I was a later adult, and they were so young. And it's just because there's so much information, there's so much stuff out there. I remember one of the things that the kids learned was from a pastor's kid. It was like, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's like you can do everything you can to try to protect your kids, but they will hear things and they are going to be exposed.
What did they learn, Ashley?
I forget. I think it was the F word. Yeah, it was, right?
It was so great to go to one of my pastor buddies and be like, hey, did you know what your kid taught my kid? I remember that. I laughed my butt off.
They were so
mortified.
Well, because they were way more legalistic too, which was really funny. And sad, but funny, because it's just gonna happen, and we can only do what we can do and try our best to protect our kids, but they are going to be exposed.
Yeah.
But yes, for Foxy, I don't need to go explaining to her, in-depth conversations. When I say, don't climb on the back of that chair, you're gonna fall over. It's you don't do this, and there's no explanation. Yeah. I'm protecting you. Don't do that.
Yeah. I think we're mostly talking about these like
older kids.
Yeah, awareness years.
Yeah.
When they start to become adults, And the goal is to try and ensure that they are an equipped adult to make wise decisions, you know? Yeah, it's wisdom. That's the big thing, is not just facts, not just like, don't do this and do this. It's that, yes, we want them to understand the do's and the don'ts, but really right now I'm equipping them with as much as possible the why we do what we do, and trying to instill in them a passion and a desire for that and what the goals of it are.
Yeah.
So even to come back full circle to what I was talking about earlier, in that I see you as my definition of beauty, because that's by God's design. So that's what I'm trying to even teach the boys, is that, hey, you don't want to go mucking around right now with looking at things that are going to distract you, because the goal is to
dilute that.
Yeah, and dilute it. The goal is to find a wife and just have one thing that you allow your desires to have an output or an outlet on. And if you don't do that, and right now you just allow your heart to be pulled in whichever direction and your eye to look at whatever you want, that has ramifications. That is now outside the design of how God designed it.
Yeah.
And therefore you're going to have negative consequences to that, because that's not inside God's design. Mm-hmm. God's design says you exercise self-discipline and you do not open a gift before it's ready to be opened. That is a gift that is intended for marriage and marriage only, and between you and your spouse. Hide that gift away and hold on to it and cherish the fact that that's something that is very valuable to me inside the confines of my marriage. So understanding the why we're doing what we're doing gives them a motivation and an understanding.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think, just to wrap it up too, I think it's really important to lead by example. And so, you know, you and I reading our Bibles and the way that we're speaking and the way that we're living our lives, like, I want that to be an example to our kids.
Yeah.
And it's so much of why we do what we do too, because they're watching us.
Yeah. And even the other day you explained to one of the boys, Dad has constraints too.
Yeah.
Dad knows what areas are smart and stupid for him to go get involved with.
Yeah.
And he then knows what his heart's desire is, which is purity inside of his marriage. So therefore, a dad doesn't have Instagram on his phone because there's crap that's on there. Like, I don't have Instagram on my phone. I don't want it. I don't want that content, that temptation to have garbage in my face.
Yeah.
So being able to express that to the boys and understand, hey, even as adults, you intentionally will constrain yourself and have what we call high walls. You know, this is a term that one of my buddies kind of has impressed on me, of ensuring that you have the self-awareness to understand this is a danger, and I'm going to create a barrier between myself and that danger to ensure that that just doesn't happen. I don't run into a scenario where that's going to cause temptation or have issues.
Yeah.
Or with Quinn. Quinn's listening to secular music, and we're starting to see in her a shift in how she's interacting. It was
like
thinking.
Very, emotionally driven music, and you could see it changing her.
Yeah.
It was like making her very, like almost like a little depressed.
Yeah, she was emotional in her responses, for sure.
Because emotional is fine, but like emotionally driven, not fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, like making decisions based off of like, and it was just odd. So we were like, you know what, we're gonna shift up your music. And it was all clean stuff, but it was too mature for her.
Yeah.
And so we said, we're gonna switch Jess back to worship and Christian music right now. And totally changed her. Completely different. Lighter. She's freer. She's not carrying around this burden of like a love story and stuff that's too much for her. Now she's just like back to her normal.
Yeah, just singing praise in her heart.
Yeah.
And I'll hear her walking around the house humming a praise song, and she has those are the words she's meditating on, you know? And she's happier because of it. She doesn't want that other garbage, you know? Yeah, hopefully this was an interesting or entertaining or informative way of describing how we parent.
No one's going to be a perfect parent, but I'm going to keep saying the same thing, but don't fall asleep on doing the work in your parenting. It's so important. It's so valuable, especially as they're getting older. I'm telling you that like as soon as they hit like 10 or 11, those years have just like gone by so fast, so much faster than the beginning.
It's crazy.
And they just are way more aware. They're consuming stuff in a different way. They're seeking for answers. So it's so valuable to be able to be the one to provide those answers to our kids.
Yeah. And if you don't provide the answer, they're going to get the answer somewhere else.
Yeah.
You know?
And just, you know, again, beg God for grace in it. And that's what we do because we're not going to be perfect and we're going to mess up and we're going to be tired. With him, we can press forward.
Amen.
We got this.
Hopefully that was, informative or helpful in some way.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
All right.
We'll see you guys next week.
Have a good one.